Okay, so I do not have a watch, but I think we're going to have time for more questions from the audience and for questions from the internet.
Yeah, I think we're going to try to get through a couple more at least. So nothing sort of stirs up the emotions of our online community more so than healthcare reform, so we'd be sort of remiss if
Imagine
we didn't
that.
ask a question here about it. So this question comes from Facebook, from Jeff Bennett. And the question is, with the recently enacted Affordable Care Act under threat of repeal, in addition to severe state budget challenges in funding cancer programs, what is the Foundation's advocacy role to help protect the rights of cancer patients and survivors?
Well, Jeff is probably sitting somewhere in Maine right now, and it might be colder there than it is here, but I don't know. Sorry you're not with us, but that's a great question. So I could say a lot about this. I'll try and keep it short. Obviously, the healthcare debate in this country over the last 18 months was extremely political, and it was extremely divisive. And we at the organization had a lot of internal debate and discussion about it. We had discussion at board meetings, we had discussion internally, and one of the board members you saw in the video, Mark McKinnon, said something during one of our discussions. And there was a discussion going on about, well, people might be upset if we take this position or that position, and what about supporters who don't agree, or all these things were coming up. And Mark said, if you're not upsetting a significant portion of people, you're not advocating strong enough. And it was very telling. And so the reason I tell you that story is at the end of the day, the filter for us is, and has always been, is this going to improve the lives of people with cancer? It's not, is this piece of legislation perfect? It's not, what would we change or how would we, is this piece of legislation or policy or initiative going to improve the lives of people with cancer? We made a decision that healthcare reform was in fact going to do that, as did the American Cancer Society, the American Public Health Association, and hundreds of other organizations. That doesn't mean it's perfect. And it doesn't mean that if we were writing it, we wouldn't change things. But if you look at coverage for pre-existing conditions, and you look at children being covered, and you look at the Medicare provisions, and you look at any number of things, people's lives are going to be saved and greatly improved. And so, in the spirit of transparency, yes, we lost donors and supporters. We got angry mail. I got a box from an individual that took off his yellow wristbands and cut them up and sent them to me in a FedEx box. I still have the box. But we have to stay focused on the people we serve. And while it was debated and there was folks on both sides of the issue, that was the decision that we ultimately made. And my hypothesis is that it will not be repealed, although it may be tweaked and changed, and it may sort of blow in the wind, as you mentioned. I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think Doug's absolutely right. There were a few key provisions within healthcare reform, and I think we were very explicit about that these were the things that we put a high priority on. And the fact that they were included and they solved major problems that our constituents came to us day in and day out and had significant problems with, that was it for us. The fact that people were coming to us every day and could not get health insurance because of their pre-existing condition. And that was not allowing them to access all of the things that they needed in order to live their life to the fullest. We could not ignore that. The fact that young adults are as a population, more uninsured and underinsured than other age groups. And when they're diagnosed, they face significant challenges and potentially financially, financial burdens that will cripple them for the rest of their lives. The fact that our constituents could not connect to clinical trials if they wanted to, for fear of not being able to pay for, or their insurance company wouldn't cover, customary procedures that were associated with the trial. So, there were things that people were coming to us day in and day out and saying, I can't do this because the system isn't set up for me to do it. That was the thing that did it for us.
And Missy might comment on this because her team within the organization are really the ones who send out the emails and get the responses and deal with the media and really bear the brunt of backlash. And I should preface by saying the backlash was minimal. I mean, this is a handful of vocal minority that we heard from, but we're all used to supporting a cause that is universal and that no one disagrees with. I mean, no one stands up and says, I don't want to see cancer eradicated in my lifetime. And so this was the first time that we had some tension, some real tension within the community.
Oh, I think that's right. And it definitely was a vocal minority, but it is enough, to Doug's point, to get our attention. But I think what everybody in this room and watching online can do to get involved is just continue to share positive comments, positive stories. Again, I just can't emphasize enough the power of sharing your story to help advocate for change. That's extremely powerful. So continue to do that, and we'll actually be in 2011, throughout the fight against this repeal, proactively asking you more for those stories where you have been impacted or you will be impacted by the legislation. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear those stories and be ready for them if we need to use them as part of our advocacy work. So keep commenting and keep the positive going so that we can kind of outweigh the negative vocal minority.
Jeff.
In two more questions here. So the last one from the online audience comes from Facebook as well, from Steve Anderson. And the question is, what are the plans for expanding LiveStrong events to more cities and more states? Do you foresee a time where some sort of 5K cycling or triathlon event is hosted in all 50 states?
You want to take that?
You want me to start it?
I mean, if you want to.
Well, I think, obviously our LiveStrong Challenge series is a LiveStrong produced event and has been very successful, but, in terms of long-term scaling, it's not really a scalable model for us to be able to do that in every state across the country. So what we really want to seek to do moving forward is really amplify and support the grassroots fundraising efforts that many of you in this room do on a continual basis, whether through LiveStrong Day or throughout the year. And really help to kind of amplify those and just encourage those as much as we can, because again, we don't have chapters or affiliates all across the country, so where we can help encourage and promote these grassroots events is kind of the way that we'll be going in the future.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And rather than have a top-down approach to here's the event that might work in this state or this city or this area, we'd rather bubble up from the bottom and people who have ideas, who have creativity at the forefront of what might work in their area. We want to partner and support those efforts to the extent that we can. So yes, we would love to see an event in every state across the country and many countries, but those events may look different from place to place. Okay, so we have time for one from the audience.
Yeah, so a question from the audience, but unfortunately we don't have a name associated with it. So if it's your question, stand up.
If you want.
Or not.
Depends what the question
Exactly.
is.
Maybe that was by design.
Okay, so final question for the evening. Does LiveStrong feel that it holds the position in society that it desires? Are you where you hope to be?
Wow.
Who said that?
Wow.
Anybody?
You don't have to stand up, really. Are we where we hoped to be? Wow. I think it's fair to say that we are on a journey that maybe we didn't even anticipate. Someone in the video, maybe Jeff Garvey, said, so many fortuitous things have happened. And I think that that's absolutely the truth. That doesn't mean that we weren't prepared and trained and ready to take advantage of opportunities. But if you would have asked that question 5 years ago, we wouldn't have envisioned sitting here talking about some of the global things or some of the other initiatives that we've mentioned. And so while we plan for multiple years in advance, you can only plan so much, and you only know so much about what's going to transpire and take place. And so I think we are where we want to be. But that doesn't mean that the opportunity in front of us isn't massive. There's something, one of our great partners, as you all know, is Nike. And Mark Parker, the CEO of Nike, said something on a panel at our global summit in Dublin. When asked about how they viewed their competitors, he said something that I'll never forget. He said, the delta between Nike and its potential is so much greater than the delta between Nike and its competition. And so I think that's the way we approach it, is that there's so much that lies ahead that we don't know. And there's so many opportunities that will come today, tomorrow, and next month, and next year. But if we stay focused on what needs to happen, we'll be on this path to bigger and better things.
Don't know that I can say it any better than that.
I'm not going to jump on that.
Well said.
So we all feel very fortunate to be where we are, and again, I would just first take a minute to thank our special panelists for sharing their personal stories. And thank my colleagues, Missy and Andy, for generously participating. And as I said earlier, this is the first event of its kind. So we want your feedback. We want your ideas. We want this to be a few days of collaborative, creative discussions. Where can we collectively go? Again, it's not about us. It's not about this organization. It's about the cause and the people who today, tomorrow, and the next day are hearing that they have been diagnosed with cancer. And if we can stay focused on serving their needs, ultimately we'll end up being where we want to be. So I don't want to keep everybody from happy hour, which I'm told is taking place a few doors down. And I'm sure it's set up and ready to go, because we all know that the most creative ideas will come from the next hour. But really and truly, I just want to say again that nothing that we do as a community is possible without everybody in this room. And we are not naive enough to think that it's because of something special that we've done or we've created. It is the collective we. And ultimately, we all have an interest in seeing the world as an improved place for people who find themselves struggling with this illness. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for what you do every day. We thank you for making the trek to Austin in the middle of winter. I actually think it'd be great if it snows tonight, because it never snows here. Some of you may not like that, but I hope everybody enjoys happy hour, and we look forward to interacting over the next few days. Thank you very much.